Hello, everyone. Welcome to FDH Lounge Mini Episode 1840. This is FDH Managing Partner Rick Morris here with one of our favorite FDH Lounge dignitaries, Russ Cohen, Managing Partner, of course, of Sportsology, proprietor, whatever the title is there, author, 11-time author of various note, including a hockey book that, of course, we want to plug. Why don't we just do that at the outset, Russ, as we did, I think, the last time you were on.
Yep, so, it's called Game Winners. It talks about the greatest goals in NHL and Olympic history. Mm-hmm. It's out now. It's at Amazon.com. A lot of big time teams. Obviously, the Detroit Red Wings have a few entries. Rangers, Canadians have an entry. The women's Olympic team, some of the outdoor games, a good mix. And we do rate the goals, and we had some fun with it.
Okay, and I'm sure that there are a few things that dovetail in with today's theme, the 2025 Stanley Cup Final. I'm sure there are some Stanley Cup Final goals in there. There would have to be, of course.
Yeah, and there's definitely Stanley Cup Final game winners. But, again, not every goal that you sort of remember, the Bobby Orr one comes to mind, but they're not all game winners.
Mm-hmm. True, yeah. Some were instrumental in other ways, but... yeah, that is an excellent book, well worth getting. Go get that. 11-time author. And as far as it goes with this year's Stanley Cup Final, you mentioned to me off air. I
want to mention one thing, though, too.
Oh, yeah.
Just because I had added this, about the Orr flying goal.
Yeah.
The only reason he went flying is because the St. Louis Blues defenseman tripped him after he scored the goal that was, the side of the cup. And so that was a really cheap move. So without that cheap move, Bobby Orr would never have been remembered for that moment where he's flown through the air, because he wouldn't have flown through the air. He would have just won the Stanley Cup.
Yes. And that was a moment where the losing team in that series would avenge it. What would it be? 49 years later. And you were there. I think you mentioned me off air. Yes.
Yeah, I thought they were going to clinch in St. Louis. I was in St. Louis and they lost that game. So then I went back to Boston and they won that game. So.
Okay. So you were there for that. And by the way, that picture, that was one where I remember this was, I think this was sometime around, maybe it was the 30th anniversary of ESPN, but they'd put together this big commemorative video of like 21st or 20th century sports and all the things that were in there. And I remember remarking to FDH Director of Research Nate Noy that I had to wait until well into the video to see. I figured that the Superman picture would be in there, and he'd never heard of it. So I remember like explaining it to him at the time, and
that's funny.
That made its way in there. If you're talking about some of the great images of 20th century sports, it would have to be. Yeah, it has to be. I mean, what an amazing picture and what an amazing moment that was. And we had a lot of amazing moments in this year's Stanley Cup Final, which you were able to cover, again, in person and otherwise through the rest of the series. And this is one where for those who are checking this out on the video here and seeing my red, white, and blue shirt, that this is one where historians will call it the original 50 states. This stayed with the original 50 states and not any states that may come into the Union subsequently for the 32nd consecutive year. So the red, white, and blue rising up to get the job done here. And this is one where, again, you could have made a very, very strong case for each of the two teams coming into the series. Each of us made a strong case for the teams in the series here. And ultimately, my sense that Florida was a team that just seemed to be better top to bottom and potentially even better than they were a year ago. That was where my emphasis was at the end. And I got to say that, like, it was even more so maybe than I thought it was, because I didn't really get the sense up until the playoffs and perhaps even the final of how much, and I say this begrudgingly because the man is an absolute rat, but how much Brad Marchand's got left in the tank. And that was one of the things that was obviously a difference maker for Florida.
Yeah, he was a big deal. I mean, he may have turned the series, honestly, because really there was a moment where, Edmonton had that big comeback game and you were thinking, could they do it? And then Chris Knobloch, for some reason, made changes to the lineup that made no sense. And one was because of injury, and then one was just, I don't know. And it didn't work out. So then he pulls Skinner. And I said before Game 6, they should not use Skinner. Not because, it wasn't because Pickard was that much better. It was just simply because Skinner had been your guy. He didn't win it last year. He was there last year, granted. You pulled him from this game for a reason. Even if you pulled him for momentum's sake, he wasn't having a great game. And I said, what if he goes down 2 goals in the first period? It's over. Mm-hmm. And they went down 2 goals in the first period. Like literally what I said happened. And that third goal was a bad goal. Mm-hmm. And so that was the death knell right there. So, and then he pulls a goalie with 7 minutes to go. Made no sense because, Edmonton eventually got on the board. Bob was hot, but it was too late. At that point, it was too late. You already gave up 2 empty net goals. What if you didn't give up 2 empty net goals and they would have scored that goal late? Even if it was like a minute to go, you'd still at least have some chance with the empty net. At that moment, they really weren't controlling the puck either. I just didn't get it. But whatever, that's coach's choice, and none of that worked out. Florida did have the better team. Doesn't mean Edmonton didn't have a chance in this series. I do think they had a great chance. And Marchand, he probably, would he have an overtime goal? Mm-hmm. That was the one overtime goal was probably, the one that gave him the confidence to kind of like all of a sudden become the Marchand that he was. Because really in the regular season, even towards the end of it with Florida, he didn't look that good.
Right.
He picked it up, man.
He did, and picked exactly the right moment with free agency on the horizon here. It is not a real deep free agency class, so he's going to have the opportunity.
There's him, and there's Ehlers and Marner, and then after that, it dips a lot.
It does. It really, really does. And more about Marner in a little bit here. You wouldn't think that he'd necessarily play into any of my analysis
and
about
Sam
this.
Bennett, who I don't think will be a free agent. I think he's going to re-sign there.
Probably, yeah. And Florida's done a very good job of keeping their core together to the ability that they're able to manage that because they have a lot of talent, a lot of guys that could be commanding high salaries, and that's hard to keep together. And 3-time defending Eastern Conference champions, 2-time defending Stanley Cup champions. You would expect that to be the case. And again, one of the strangest statistics in hockey history and something that must cause convulsions north of the border every time that they hear this, but the 6th time in a row that the Eastern Conference champion has come out of Florida, and 4 of the 6 years been a Stanley Cup champion. I don't know how that's going to explained easily.
Yeah, I mean that 93, 94, 92, 93 rather was the last time the Canadians won, right? And the last time Canada won a Stanley Cup because the Rangers won the year after.
Yeah.
When I was watching it then, I never got a sense that like Canada was never going to win another cup. Like it's crazy to me.
Well, and I've gone through and I've documented over the years the number of times where, and this must cause the greatest amount of gall north of the border, when it's Sunbelt against Canada, when it's the part of our country that, all things being equal, cares about hockey the least and has thumped them time after time after time, also in other rounds of the playoffs as well, but in the final. And yet, in 93, who was it? It was Montreal and LA. And Montreal must have been thinking at the time, these Sunbelt guys, we'll dominate them forever, Russ.
Yeah, I mean, that is the way it happens. And, there's always this no tax state thing, but and it is a factor. It's not the biggest factor.
Sure.
The other factors, there's other factors. The other factors are, hey, first, go to a winning team. Second, go to a city that you like. Third, then, money sometimes is first, but sometimes money's third, depending if those other things are what you're looking for. I would say this. I would say teams like the Rangers still have an edge because there are players that want to play at MSG and play in New York, and LA gets a little bit of an edge, but not as much. Marchand Boston had a deal worked out to LA, according to one of the insiders, and Marchand nixed it. Mm-hmm. So he wanted to go to Florida. So, when things like that start happening, I get why people are thinking this. But again, Rick, is this a factor in baseball? Is this a factor in football? No,
it's really not. And what is a thing here is, you see it, especially in a sport like the NFL and to a certain extent, the NBA also too, with established powers. Players want to gravitate to
They go there regardless, yeah.
Yeah, and as Tampa Bay got to that level, they were able to attract talent in. The same is true with Florida. A guy like Marchand's like, let me go to Florida. They got a better chance to win it than LA. No offense to LA, but they didn't even make it out of the first round when I thought they would this year.
We all thought they would, and we've been over that, so whatever.
Well, and I want to take a look at that for a second here, and even the Western Conference Final against Dallas, because you mentioned here about Knobloch getting to the finals and some of his coaching touch kind of deserting him here, and it's one of those things where
it deserted Knobloch. It did.
It did, and he was so incredibly. You put this in all caps, incredibly foundational to what they did on that run through the Western Conference playoffs, just being the coach that could push all the right buttons and everything. But it's one of those things where, again, when you look at this, the fact that like during the regular season, that Edmonton was a team that finished like say, what was it, 14th in terms of goals against. I mean, they went on this great defensive run in the Western Conference playoffs, but this is one of those things where sometimes you have to look at something and you wonder if in real time, if you judged it the right way. I think the way that they played LA, the way that they played Vegas, I think the way that they played Dallas, it was a thing where like, hey, take your hat off to Edmonton. They were a juggernaut, whatever. But I'm looking at particularly Dallas, which is not matched up well, and I guess LA too. They've not matched up with Edmonton well the last couple of years in the playoffs.
Based on the styles, a lot of times it's like a boxing match. Sometimes one guy can beat another guy and they can't beat, this guy. And it happens with teams too. I mean, it's not uncommon. I think what happened with Knobloch is he just got out coached. Like he got to the point where, he's a fairly new coach still. And, he went up against Maurice, who's been in the league forever and has already won a cup, and he got out coached.
True, although the cards that Maurice is holding are stronger. I mean, Maurice was never going to be in a situation where, short of an injury to Bob, it was never going to be, gee, who's my goalie going to be tonight?
No, I mean? That's not the whole series.
I know. That's one aspect, though.
Yes,
they're also a thinner roster than Florida. We talked about it coming in that Florida.
Yeah, but they had more depth than they did last year. It's not like it was that thin.
True, but
it's like Zach Hyman. Sure, that was a loss, no question.
Yeah,
big loss.
But I'm looking at this and I'm thinking, maybe we weren't harsh enough to LA and to Dallas. Maybe it was a thing of like, gee, what are you going to do? Edmonton looks like a juggernaut right now. They're pushing all the right buttons.
Dallas. I think Dallas.
Okay,
I think they're turning into the San Jose Sharks. I do.
They may be, because it's like you look at the way that Edmonton, particularly the way they finished the finals. And I'm just looking at this going, you mean to tell me that Dallas, wouldn't have given Florida potentially a better series than this, the way that it ended up? But that's where
they can't get over the hump, and they haven't been there since the pandemic, and they may never get back there.
Well, a lot of it's going to hinge on the coaching move for next year. And, so we'll have to see how that plays out.
It seems like it's going to be Gulletson. I mean, but we don't know for sure.
Yeah, that still remains to be seen. But yeah, this was a final where, again, the last two games, Florida laid a pretty good thumping on Edmonton. But the way that it started out, 3 of the first 4 games going to Edmonton, game 2 going to double overtime, game 3 was a blowout. So, I mean, it's sort of a tale of 2 series, games 1, 2, and 4, and then games 3, 5, and 6. And unsurprisingly, those were all games that were won by Florida. And that's a thing where, I mean, to make a little bit of a comparison to the NBA Finals, still ongoing as we're taping this here. The better team, the favorite going into both series here, whether it be Florida or Oklahoma City, it does really seem like, again, they do better when they're in a chance to kind of pull away. And that, Edmonton has that kind of pesky kind of tendency to them, the same way as Indiana. If they're in it, they may win a disproportionate amount of the close games, but the favorite has a chance to pull away and thump them, and that's what Florida did in 3 of their first 4 wins.
Yeah, I think that's fair, and screw Indiana. I don't care about the Pacers.
Yeah. That's nobody that's ever been a Knicks fan would be here at this point.
I'm not a Knicks fan anymore, but I was. So yeah.
Well, there's one more reason for you to root for Oklahoma City, and that is for the good of the overall enterprise. Ben, we are our friend Ben Chu. I was about to say he's going to go 11-0 if Oklahoma City wins. In 11 years of coming on and doing the picks ahead of time, Ben is going to be 11-0 if Oklahoma City gets it done tomorrow night. So that's a reason for everybody.
Screw Oklahoma City too, though, because I went. I was a guest of Microsoft. I went to a game in Seattle, the last season in Seattle, and that building was good. The fans loved it.
Yes.
They were very well attended, and that guy was just a billionaire, and he felt like moving a team, and I have no use for them either. But FanDuel makes me pick a team, so I did pick Oklahoma City.
Well, Ben is very conflicted as well as a lifelong Sonics fan, as I'm sure
Oh,
you
I
can
bet you he
imagine.
is.
So, yes, he's very conflicted on this, but I keep telling him 11-0 after this. The glory of being 11-0, which, by the way, I would be 8-3 over the same run. I mean, that's not anything to to frown at, but 8-3 is nothing compared to 11-0. But as far as great historical markers, I teased it a little bit ago that I wanted to circle back to, of all people, Mitch Marner here as we're talking about this. So I have a column coming up as we're about to release this week, 2025 Pro Hockey Draftology, available on the main page at fantasydrafthelp.com, and of course, Sportsology being a big part of that as well, about this kind of glory gap that this generation has right now. When you're looking at the greatness of some of these players, we saw it in the finals here. McDavid and Draisaitl coming up empty again in the Stanley Cup Final. And in looking at it, hockey is a sport, as you and I have talked about this year, disproportionately throughout history. The greatest players have their name on the cup. The greatest of the great. They're basically all on the cup. Marcel Dion, probably the best who doesn't. Would we agree on that?
I would agree.
So looking at players in their prime, I have a feature piece in there. I'm singling out 5 guys that are squarely in their primes. So I'm not taking like early 20s guys that haven't done it yet or anything like that. 5 guys in their prime: McDavid, Draisaitl, Matthews, Marner, and I'm going to say Kaprizov as well. 5 guys right there. And so it's going to be very, very historically odd if some or all of them don't win a cup eventually. Now, again, Marner being an unrestricted free agent, but if he was to be back in Toronto, him and Matthews could, one fell swoop, they could get both their names on the cup. Draisaitl and McDavid, one fell swoop, could get both their names on the cup. But it's an interesting thing right now because we're not used to seeing this throughout the course of history. These are 5 guys that I think have a strong chance to be minimum top 50 guys. I think McDavid's already top 10. I think Draisaitl's already top 25. The other guys certainly could be top 50
Matthews
players.
Is eventually going to be there too. I agree. The only caveat I would give is McDavid may end up being like Ray Bourque at the end. Like, I think he's going to re-sign in Edmonton, but if they don't get it done at some point, he may go elsewhere to get it done.
Yeah. And that's what it may take, and Bourque certainly would have been on the short list for best players never to win a cup as well. Right. So there's a lot that can go on between now and then, but I think it's unusual to be squarely in the prime.
Like Dave Winfield in baseball, but was he really a factor for the Blue Jays?
Not really. And I mean, and he was a guy where he was one of the best players of his time, but I don't think anybody would tell you he's one of the best players of all time. And that's where it's kind of different.
Yeah, it's an interesting one with him. He's a great athlete. He really was a terrific player, but I think he falls a little short of that.
Yeah. 2 or 3 sports, right? I think he was drafted in basketball.
Too, I think, yeah.
And then I don't know why I'm thinking it may have been, I don't know if it was football or not, but it was at least basketball. But yeah, he was a guy
for sure. I'm not sure about anything else.
Yeah, Dave Winfield, once unfairly nicknamed Mr. May by Steinbrenner. Yeah. That was one of the great pieces of smack there. But in terms of guys who were Mr. May and Mr. June, in these series here, again, Florida, unsurprisingly, having more of their guys step up. That is generally the case when you go on to win the cup. And for Edmonton, I don't know that there's necessarily a whole lot of very, very visible, goats at this point in time. I mean, I suppose Skinner, perhaps, based on the fact that the way he had played in the Western Conference playoffs was unrepresentative of how he played in the finals. But there doesn't appear to be much finger pointing towards any of the Oiler players specifically that I've seen.
No, actually, if anything, McDavid talked about coaching decisions. So they're hard on their coaches there, man. I mean, it's hard when you have Connor McDavid and Draisaitl, and they're 2 of the best 10 players in the league, and they're not getting it done.
Yeah,
finger pointing does happen, and sometimes it happens in coaching.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, best 5, I would say, and probably at least the last 5 years. It's a very unusual situation, in hockey and in today's NHL. I mean, you had it, I suppose, at a certain point in time when Crosby and Malkin were still, kind of at that point. But
they had it in baseball. It's happened in baseball a lot.
Yeah, and that's and if you're talking, guys who are, I would say McKinnon is in the top 5, and I would say Makar is probably at the fringes of that. So it's not the only type situation in hockey, but it is a little bit unusual.
But what do you mean? Those guys won. What are you talking about?
Well, they won. Yeah, they're not in with the guys that haven't gotten it done yet. But as far as I'm just talking, as far as teams having a 1-2
two
punch
of the best
of that level. Yes,
Got it.
yes. In that sense of that level, it's unusual in hockey to because again, and this is one of the things that I noted in the piece. I mean, like he's only halfway there, but like if somebody put a gun to your head and was like, "You tell me who's going to break Ovechkin's record," I mean, wouldn't you say Draisaitl? I mean, like he's as likely.
I mean, yeah, that's possible.
I mean, he's as likely as anybody. I realize he's only halfway there, and that shows you how hard it is to make it happen. But it's like it's one of these. I was explaining it to one of my non-hockey fans recently that like the Jordan and Pippen, the Pippen of the two is actually the much better goal scorer. You know, that Jordan is the better points guy all the way around in this analogy.
I think,
but it's
I think like for the San Fran Giants, Mays and McCovey, because Mays won with the New York Giants, but I think for the San Fran Giants, Mays and McCovey were an amazing duo, and they didn't win in San Francisco. Yeah, we've seen it more in baseball, I think.
Yeah, that is true. But that's where, and again, the burden of the burden of following through and winning a championship when you're at that level, that is something that, however painful it was for me as a Red Wings fan to watch that McKinnon and Makar did get it done 3 years ago, and that is something where these guys are still.
Don't worry,
chasing that.
The eyes are playing. You're in good shape.
I actually have an analysis in there of the Iser plan in Pro Hockey Draftology.
It can't be that positive anymore.
It's it is a mixed review.
I would think
it is a mixed review. I mean, anytime look, I was screaming at the moment that like Cop and Compher and like some of these contracts, like, what are you doing? Yeah. Like the teams you played on, they weren't overpaying functional players like this.
You picked up Craig Smith this year. Like what was that?
Yeah, and like. And I get it. And part of it is, too, and I note this in the piece here as well, that for all of the cynicism about the way that leagues conduct their lotteries, you got to say the NHL's on the up and up. Because if you're in the NHL office and as marketing obsessed as they are, wouldn't they have thrown us a break here from time to time?
Oh, absolutely.
We've been
get a break.
We've been less lucky than our bad records versus Dallas here. Let's send Luka to the Lakers and cash in a 1.8% chance to get the number 1 pick overall.
Just to prove my point where Detroit really needed to bolster their team at the deadline. Craig Smith played 19 games and got 2 assists.
Yeah, so I mean, it's it's going to be now or never. What about the rumors here? Good old Elias making his way over from Vancouver. That would be
for Detroit.
That's the rumor mill, buddy.
There's no way Yzerman's paying that contract. No way.
Yeah, that's the rumor mill, anyways. Okay, so that I'm sad.
Don't put any stock into that whatsoever.
I'm sad to have you pour cold water on that because I was starting to get my hopes up. But that's
I don't think that one's going to happen.
Yeah, well,
it may get traded, but not there.
Yeah, he might. And by the way, it's not the best time in the world to trade him, anyways. You are kind of selling low, but that's where. That's what gives me some hope here. But
the teams don't mind selling low to get out from under sometimes too. So
no, they don't, and that's where again you have to give credit to Florida and Edmonton with what they've done managing the contracts of the last couple of years. And it is a situation where
also guys they picked up. They picked up Carter Verhaeghe for nothing. They picked up Forsling for nothing. Like those guys, they got that way. They still drafted well with guys like Anton Lundell. When they got Bennett, they got him, cheaper than many other years they would have gotten him. When they got Reinhardt, they definitely got him cheaper because the Sabres don't seem to ever make the right decision. So, you start looking at how they piece together a team, and they might be able to keep their team together because of the it's tax state thing, but no tax. But, I mean, that's not how they put them together.
And just some of the moves around the margins, too. Like a guy that I've thought is a quality player for a long period of time that Edmonton picked up, John Klingberg. I mean, just being able to get a guy like that and incorporate him in. So it just is.
Jones. They got Seth Jones, man. I mean, he's there beyond this year. He's there for, a number of years now. And Chicago bailed out on him, and that's fine. But they got Seth Jones, man.
Yeah, and again, we all remember, the hype and the pedigree that he came in with. So, I mean.
I got a video on my Instagram, him talking about his dad, Popeye's in the background, like, come on.
Yeah. I mean, quite a family lineage there. The cross sport father-son thing, somewhat reminiscent of Patrick and Pat Mahomes, one might say, as far as a completely different sport. But it is.
Those are a little more successful than, even though Patrick Mahomes has won a ton.
Yeah,
Popeye was a little more successful than Dad. So
that's true. That's true. Yes. And so in looking at this again, Florida and Edmonton likely to be back next year. I mean, in the thick of it. I mean, making this kind of a run yet again.
I am not
we've
making
seen,
any. No, I'm not going there, because in 2004, I thought for sure Tampa had this young team. They had the best line in hockey. They had Hobby Bull in the net. They could do it again. They could come back again. They might do it for a number of years. All of a sudden, Hobby Bull doesn't sign there, and the whole trajectory of that team goes down. With John Tortorella fighting with John Graham, if you remember. So that next year. So I don't know what's going to happen next year with the Panthers. I think they're going to keep Bennett and Marchand. What if they don't?
Yeah.
Like all of a sudden, then that changes things drastically. And Bill Zito didn't know the answer to that either. Like, we interviewed him on the ice, and he honestly doesn't know, because you don't know. Right now it looks good, right? It looks good. Everybody's going in. They're having a few beers. They're going into Dairy Queen. They're going into Raising Cane's and getting chicken tenders. And everybody's happy right now. They had the parade today. Everybody's great. And in 2 weeks, or not less than that, in July 1st, everything could change. Like, I don't know that for sure.
Sure. Have you seen the Ring doorbell thing of
Markov?
Yeah, that was pretty good.
If I was his next door neighbor, I would have been down there in my underwear picking up the Stanley Cup. I wouldn't care.
Oh yeah, that would have been amazing. By the way, Tampa 04. Quick question on that.
Yeah.
Any possibility, as far as the momentum that you have being a champion, whatever, no season the next season? You think that might have had anything to do with it there, as far as the continuity of that team? I mean, I know Hobby Bullen plays an outsized role in all of this.
Yeah, I think there's something to it, because when the Rangers won the next year, there was the extended lockout that they eventually ended, and the Devils won the cup in that shortened year.
Don't remind me.
but the Rangers were less of a factor in that shortened year, so I do think there's something to it.
Yeah, and that's where, again, theoretically, presumably, we will have a 25-26 NHL season for Florida to come back out.
No, they're fine. The CBA will get signed by July, I think. End of July, I think. So.
Okay, all right, so they will get that.
There's no issues. It's not like baseball. Baseball is going to strike again. I could see it.
Well, the funny thing is that, like, baseball, and again, you being a historian like me, it's one of these deals where, like, every time around, going back to, and again, I remember what was going to be the thing, and people don't really remember this, but I'm sure that you probably would. Had 9/11 never happened, there was going to be a lockout that off season. And MLB lost their nerve because of that. But it's like every contract ever since, the whole division in baseball in terms of the salaries and everything like that, like, it's so funny because everybody always talks tough going in, and that the players have successfully basically held their ground every last time in here. And I remember, I think it was Seth Everett that was saying on the show and was telling me last time, like, this time's going to be different. This time, I'm like, really? I don't know. I'll believe it when I see it.
Here's what I see. I see some crazy contracts, and we'll include Juan Soto, even though it's for my New York Mets. That's fine.
Sure.
They're out of balance. We see the talk of ESPN wanting to get out of the baseball coverage, and I hear YouTube may take that over. Yeah. And so, like, at the end of 2026, there may be so much imbalance in the league, because there's already a ton. They may have a lockout.
Yeah, and that may very well happen, and that's one of those things. They're always afraid to kind of like look into the abyss, but that's a thing where, again, if you have a number of teams that are in that bad of a situation, you kind of have to do it. And maybe this is calling the bluff on the finances of a lot of these fraud ownerships, like the Dolans.
Yeah, there's the Pittsburgh Pirates. Like, come on, man! I grew up with Stargell and all those guys, and it was tremendous, and it's a tremendous city, and those fans love that team, and now they just, they're not even trying.
Yeah. And so you're not going to be seeing that, like you said, in the NHL. They will be
coming the Guardians, back. They have a decent team, but they're not really trying finance-wise either. Not as much as they could, or the Mets wouldn't have Lindor.
Right. I mean, they're not trying at all. And it's one of those things where, like, when I hear, like when they're not playing as well, like, people in this town, like, what's the problem with the baseball team? I'm like, they got an overall payroll of like $49.23. Right. And it shows when you look at the starting lineup.
Right.
and the pitching rotation and whatever. Like all these dummies around here are just like, how come they're not doing better? They made it to the American League Championship Series last year because the American League is the losers bracket. Have you looked at basically what it? I've never, and this is another story for another day. I don't think I've ever seen a period of imbalance of where it looks like the NBA Eastern Conference for the last 20 years.
Yeah, I don't know. The way I look at baseball, there's like 10 good teams. That's it.
Most of them are in your league, so that's a thing where that's what the Mets got to battle through. In the American League, the coast is pretty much clear.
Oh, yeah.
And that's just basically kind of the way that it goes here. But in the NHL, say what you will, they don't have that level of competitive imbalance between the conferences. It will be a season next year where, again, I think the league will have a real chance to kind of make it back into the conversation.
The ratings were down, and that's something that has to worry them. Ratings were down a lot.
But I've been saying all this time, dumb, for them not to go to the Olympics. I will be proven right when they go to the Olympics next year. You saw a taste of it this year with the Four Nations face-off and the way that people kind of react to them.
But we have to be honest. The Four Nations at the beginning, people forget tickets were not selling.
Okay.
Because nobody was really sure, fans and even players, when they were picked for these teams, how competitive was it going to be? And then tickets started selling like wildfire after they saw like the first game, and their players were like, yeah, we want to win this.
Sure.
And then that's when it really started to pick up steam.
And some of it is, to put this tactfully, a time and a place in society when that happened. So, there's that part of it as well.
That's a good historic take on it. Sure.
That had a lot to do with it. I mean, that had a lot to do with the whole USA aspect of the thing here, which I think it's going to carry over to the Olympics next year. I really think
the U.S. is going to be the hated team. There's no question.
Yeah. I mean, they're going to have, a target on their heads, and a lot of these guys on the team wouldn't have it any other way. So I think ultimately,
it's not like I don't think any of the Kachuk brothers could care less, man.
Right. Yeah. The Kachuk brothers will be waving their arms for fans to throw trash at them. I mean, so yeah, you're going to see
that conference call with Bill Guerin when they announced the 6, and they already announced, both Kachuks, and they didn't announce Connor Hellebuck. And I was like, because I know we've gone off course here, but the weird thing on this is in the past, I don't think Olympians sort of had to sing for their supper, NHL Olympians, before the season as the Olympics were happening. But now Bill Guerin's basically like, Hellebuck, you gotta do something. And he's telling like Adam Fox, you didn't have a season up to your standard. He's hinting that he's on the team, but he's got to do something. And it's like, it's like a weird spot to be in. And then these 6 guys, like, you're locked in. You don't have to take them. Like people have written, well, you don't have to. No, you don't have to take them with you on the team. But if they're not hurt, and you all of a sudden don't have them, you're going to look foolish. So they're not. Guerin's basically saying, I took great painstaking lengths to make sure these guys were the guys that I knew were making this team no matter what. And I go back to when Brian Burke said, Chris Drury's Chris Drury. We all said, hey, Chris Drury's not what he used to be. He doesn't have the points. He doesn't have this. And Brian Burke didn't want to hear from it. And now we're in a different era, it seems.
Well, I will say, as far as Hellebuck goes, I mean, did any of this have to do with Guerin consulting the playoff home road splits? I mean, do we know? Is there any? This
is a whole different faction when you get into the Olympics, right? It's not like the NHL. It's not.
Have there been any rumors that Hellebuck's agent petitioned for him to telecommute from Winnipeg? Is that possible?
No.
Well, it will be amazing to see all the different rosters getting rolled out for that. So a lot to look forward to for next season as well. But again, a tremendous season that we just saw the end of here. And again, I would say a better than average Stanley Cup final. Again, it veered between the closest and close and blowouts.
We'd have liked it to go longer, but it had a lot of moments.
Yeah.
I got to tell you, too, on the ice, I have a picture of Brad Marchand with his daughter, or like on Dad's shoulders, and he's going towards the Stanley Cup, and he's watching his teammates lift the Stanley Cup, and I'm like, here's Brad Marchand, a dad. Like, you hate this guy now? Like, it's funny.
I still do, but
but it's funny, right? Because he seems like a good dad. I'm sure he is. Yet you still hate him. You don't care. But there is a separation here sometimes, and I get to see it. I get to see it with the families on the ice right after the cup and all the love and everything. And then next year people will be booing Brad Marchand. But right now, some people saw that picture I took and they're like, oh, that's kind of nice.
Yeah. Well, he did get to show another side of himself, but the thing that will endear himself to teams in free agency this summer will not have as much to do with that, more to do with what he did on the ice in the final and a chance to, again, in a thin class, he's going to be in a position to really cash in. That's one of those things where
there's a limit, maybe 4-year deal. That's it.
He is. I said to one of my friends the other day, it was kind of like, well, what if he signs in Detroit? I'm like, well, I learned to love Chelios. I learned to love Patrick Kane.
It's not like everybody on Detroit's a choir boy. Come on, man.
I've successfully learned to love everybody they've brought in that I previously hated. This would test me.
Listen, I'll tell you what. As a Met fan, and rest in peace, Ricky Henderson. I didn't hate him, but I didn't love him. But I hated him before the Mets, and I didn't hate him after. So you do learn to adjust.
You do. And as far as learning to deal with ambiguities, as far as how you feel about a player.
All right, listen, I got to stop this. Hold on.
Yeah.
Right now, the Mets are beating the Phillies on Fox, and they're showing the Jim Bunning Father's Day no-hitter against the Mets. And goddamn, I've been watching that thing my whole life. Wow. 1964. I was only a year old. But I'm tired of seeing it and hearing about it. And you know what, Fox? F you.
You're aging yourself there with that take, pal. But that's well, at least there. I don't. To have that constant
black and white footage. Can you show something else?
Well, now you know how I feel about the drive, okay? I mean, there are certain things that just have jammed up your ass now and forever if you're a sports fan, depending on the market that you're in. So there's that, or Red Right 88. So, I mean, there are certain things I've had to deal with as well. Jordan with the shot, which I think he was traveling on that one anyway.
Oh, he wasn't traveling. Will you stop it? My God.
So,
it was a perfect game, not a no-hitter.
It was a perfect game, yeah.
I don't want Phillies fans to get mad at me. I was in the moment, but yeah.
That was, I believe, that was the last one until Lenny Barker in 81. So.
Oh, Len Barker, he played for the. Can I say the Indians anymore? I don't know.
Yes. They're still the Indians to me. They'll always be the Indians to me, but yes. So, with our various fandoms, we've had some crosses to bear, certainly over a period of time. And as a Wings fan, I continue to lug that cross. But
now it's not so sexy to be a Wings fan.
Yeah, I mean, these are the times that try men's souls, as they say. But it's a dirty job, but somebody's got to do it. So I'll continue representing. Still bring out the old stuffed octopus here.
Pizza.
Yeah, exactly. So, but always great getting to break down the hockey with you, my man. And again, take a chance here to plug the book again. Book number 11 out on the market.
On Amazon.com, myself and Matt Blittner. Go check it out. If you want an autographed copy, message me at Sportsology on Twitter, on Instagram.
Very good. Go get the book, folks. It is an amazing book, and it will be something that you'll be very, very happy to have on your coffee table.
Look at the NBA's Top 50. That's a good book, too, I hear.
That's an excellent book as well. Yes, you can't go wrong with that one. One could say perhaps the top 75 players in pro basketball history.
75.
How do you bundle your own book, Russ?
I know.
That's amazing.
I screwed it up.
That'll go in the bloopers here for the show in the time to come. But on that note, thank you as always, Russ Cohen, and thank you everybody for checking out FDH Lounge mini episode 1840.